Hello everybody and welcome back to Odin's Movie Blog. I am the critic who is a cynic, Odin well, and today we're talking about a wonderful article from our friends over at Bounding in the Comics. If you've never checked them out, please go ahead and do so because they are freaking fantastic. And today we've got an article that not only has Young Rippa in there, who's a freaking awesome YouTuber, go check him out too as well, but also you have an entertainment critic here, Richard Rushfield, who's blasting the Access Media. This is really something that I think lays a smackdown on the Access Media more than anything else, and it's coming from someone who's actually from inside the Access Media, someone who knows the background, someone who's worked with these people, someone who understands that these are the same people that are totally fixing the scores over at Rotten Tomatoes. These are the same people that are putting all those crappy reviews from Rotten Tomatoes, and this is the same people, and this is the same person who knows the people who are doing the same nonsense of pushing up people like Brie Larson, pushing up studios like Disney because they want to keep their access, because they don't care about being honest. They don't care about actually being critical of anything because they would rather protect their own access to all the free passes and all the star meetups and interviews than actually be honest and do what they actually supposedly studied in school. But here we have Richard Rushfield, and just a little bit of information about him. Entertainment critic, the editor-in-chief of The Ankler, and a former editor of the LA Times, Gawker, BuzzFeed, Yahoo, and HitFix. So let's do that one more time. He was a former editor of LA Times, Gawker, BuzzFeed, and Yahoo. So this is someone who has worked with pretty much some of the biggest access media, some of the biggest names in this left-leaning SJW-isms in the media, and he is calling them out on frickin' blast. So it says, put the Access Media on blast in his latest breakdown on the weekend's box office. While discussing the box office performances of yesterday and late night, Rushfield called out the Access Media and the entertainment studios. Rushfield stated, "We've come to this bizarre place where the boundaries between the roles of critic, political activist, fanboy, and box office reporter have completely dissolved. Thank you." That one sentence by itself, thank you so much. You are so right. The same reason why I call out Scotty Boy Mendelsohn all the time, because he's supposed to be a box office reporter, and yet he constantly puts politics into his articles. Everything has to play a role in some larger, greater good narrative, which is fine if critics want to see the world that way and offer criticism through the lens of how does this help the movement. It's hard to justify if you're supposedly covering box office for the film industry and filtering your business analysis through that lens, or that lens watering down via general media hoopla. This, to me, I think, honestly, it almost seems like he is calling out Scott Mendelsohn to the T, because he's talking specifically about box office revenue here and people who cover the box office, and there's no bigger name in that than Scotty Boy Mendelsohn, and we already know just how much of a hack he can be at times. But what's really great about this is that he is just getting started here, and he's about to destroy every single person. He would then go on to criticize the entertainment studios for relying on Access Media. He says, "In any event, the last time I checked, these companies, even poor little Amazon," oh my gosh, calling it poor little Amazon is just, had relatively robust marketing departments. Since when is the survival of their films dependent upon dragooning the help of the last remaining underpaid journalist in America to serve their cause? Thank you. Why does a multi-billion-dollar studio like Disney, for example, need people in the media to prop up their films? They have something called a marketing department. Guess what? You do realize that you have to pretty much double the entire production cost of a film, almost. Either you take half of it and then add that to the production cost to get how much they actually spend on marketing. They spend millions upon millions. Disney specifically spends like probably close to $100 million almost every single time they put out a big budget film, and they don't need any extra help. This is, to me, really calling them out because, one, the studios honestly don't need the help, and two, the studios are still offering all of the perks that these Access Mediaites love, and it's the same reason why they continue to give all of their privileged reviews to and their privileged scores to on top of that. Rushfield's criticism of movie critics is not a new one. Agnes Poirier described the phenomenon back in 2018 in an article entitled #MeToo Activists Should Stop Trying to Be Film Critics. They Undermine Feminism. Hoo boy. I bet that was amazing. Poirier specifically discusses the film, critic reaction to Ava Hussen's Girls of the Sun, and notes. So this is again from Agnes here. Film critics judge films as human beings, aided by their knowledge of cinema and its history. They judge a film objectively and subjectively. Thank you for noting that there is a difference between the two. They consider the mise-en-scène, editing, framing, acting, and they also respond emotionally, an emotion built on their shared humanity. To think that your gender, and by extension the color of your skin, your age, your religion, or lack thereof, the size of your bank account predetermines your every thought is denying our ability to think and decide freely and to engage with the world in all its diversity and complexity. There is such a thing as universal human experience. It is what binds us all together. Oh my God. This is like, seriously, it's so great. It's not just great when YouTubers and many other people in our community call this stuff out. It's even better when people from the actual Access Media, from the people that know and work with these asshats actually call it out as well. It just really is something that just brings a smile to your face. She adds, activism never makes for great art, nor does it make for great journalism. The feminist cause is far better served by artists, male or female, white or black, young or old, rather than by the thought police. If movements such as #MeToo allow themselves to be co-opted by moralists, they risk losing credibility and they stifle creativity. And we have seen that happen. I mean, oftentimes you see when everyone talks about the Me Too movement, it's oftentimes seen as this hyper-political, hyper-SJW, identity politics-driven movement, and it's not taken as seriously as it should be because there are some people that are getting thrown in there because they see it as a way for them to talk about their experiences, talk about things that may have happened to them and finally expose it. But unfortunately, they're getting thrown in with these same idiots that keep on co-opting these movements and try to turn it into some crazy political ideology. And then these same people who are doing that are also in the media, are also covering film, are also covering the box office, like was pointed out earlier, and they're putting all of that identity politics into their coverage of those things. Especially when you talk about the box office is mostly an objective standard because you're covering how much money a film actually made or is projected to make, which is based on essentially a science in a lot of ways. It's based on mathematics, but it's also too based on their own understandings of the box office from the history. So there really is no room for them to add in their own political discourse. There really is no room for them to do that. You know, if I was someone that was just covering box office numbers and that was my main goal, obviously that would be the main thing I was focused on. I wouldn't have to bring in politics into it. If I was working for Forbes.com like Skyboy Mendelson, that's what I would be doing. Because of course I'm a YouTuber and because I'm covering, I cover the box office, for example, for Geeks and Gamers, and that channel is much broader than just that, I'm able to bring in all these other things, but also for the most part, I'm calling out the nonsense that's being covered by people like Scott Mendelson and so many others. The criticism of the film industry is no stranger to those who have been following the comic book industry evolve over the past few years. In a video that he would do if he was in control of Marvel Comics, Eric July notes that your job, so that's talking about talking about Young Ripid there. Your job as a writer is to not just take an established character and simply tell some random story with them. Your job is to take that character, write new, fresh stories that operate within the context of the history and the behavior of the character. This almost reminds me a little bit, again, bringing my Catholicism here for a second, reminds me a little bit about church councils, where church councils might bring about certain changes in the church, but it never goes against what has already been previously established. That's something that many people oftentimes forget with Vatican II, for example. It's the reason why there are so many divisions still in the church post-Vatican II, because there's a lot of people that said, oh my gosh, everything is different now, and they ran with it, the so-called spirit of Vatican II, when in reality, it was not. Nothing had actually changed. Nothing had changed from the beginning. It was just different small changes throughout. That's what talking about here with Young Ripid. That's what we're all talking about here when it talks about stories in general, is that the whole point of a story writer is to take something that is obviously they're adapting it, to take something that's been previously established and to take that same character, historically relevant character, and put it into a new story. For example, we look to things like Spider-Man, where they have just completely changed it and completely ignored the past of that character. That's why people like Gary Nerdrotic's channel are so pissed off about it. That's why Young Rippa is pissed off about it. That's why so many comic fans are pissed off with how these various characters are now being iterated, because they go against completely the historical context of the characters. And I think that Young Rippa is completely accurate here in calling that nonsense out. And so I think that is something that adds to everything that we've been talking about today. And I think that it's something that really needs to be talked about a lot more. That these critics are not only, not just do we see that in the making of film and the writing of stories, but we also see it in the criticism of those stories as well. And I think that we're all just tired of there being this crazy left-leaning, leftist SJW politics in every single thing. Not only do we have to deal with it in our movies, but now we have to deal with it in the criticism of those movies. Now we have to deal with it in every aspect of every part of film life. And as someone who loves film, who loves movies, I'm getting so sick and tired of it. And that's why I keep calling it out. That's why I talk about it all the time, because it needs to be called out. It needs to be brought to the surface. It needs to be brought to the light. And until it is actually brought to the light, it's never going to change. It's never going to adapt. And I really think it's important that we do so. But anyway, guys, what are y'all's thoughts about this? Do you think that, people like, seriously, Richard Rushfield here and also Agnes Poirier, like seriously, Poirier, I think that these two people should receive gold medals of honor for their amazing work here, like at least as far as gold medals of honor of the film industry, because in all honesty, I think that we need more people like this calling them out. And also, too, that's why we need to make up our own places. We need to create something new that is free of this nonsense, that is much more straightforward with, hey, this is what we think, this is what we're talking about here, instead of trying to act like, oh, look, I'm objective and I'm a film critic and I spent years in the film industry and you don't know what you're talking about. You're stupid. You don't know anything. But I'm going to go ahead and preach to you in my criticism by, bringing in my identity politics into it. We need to do away with that. We need to find something different, and we need to find that role between, again, objective and subjective, which is being talked about here, because that is true. There is a difference between the two, and we need it to be made very clear. Thank you so much for watching, guys. If you like this video, smash the like button, give me a thumbs up, give me a subscribe. It helps me out a lot. You are all amazing and beautiful people. Have a wonderful day, and as always, God bless.